Hi, I'm Esther.
And I'm Sean.
I write about AI news here at Tech Target.
And I edit Esthers Stories.
We're here to talk to tech experts about everything AI, from open and closed models to AI agents and who's ahead in the generative AI race.
And even the elusive AGI.
We've got it covered, right, Sean?
Yep, we've got it covered.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another Targeting AI podcast. Today, we are speaking to Craig Leclerc, an AI analyst at Forrester Research. At Forrester, Craig covers automation, AI technology, and the future of work. Before Forrester, Craig worked as a vice president at ADP. He is also a published author. In 2019, he published Invisible Robots in the Quiet of the Night. His latest book, Random Acts of Automation, comes out in January. Very exciting. Thank you so much for joining us on today's podcast, Craig.
It's my pleasure, Esther. Thank you for having me.
Okay, so Esther gave me the first shot today. So to kick it off, we want to learn a little bit more about you and who you are. And so can you talk about your journey with AI technology and automation, and what first piqued your interest about it and kind of when? And I'm assuming that was before the explosion of Gen AI. So maybe it's a process of going from AI to automation to Gen AI.
Yeah, I have been an analyst at Forrester for, believe it or not, 18 years. And before that, I was with various software companies. And, so I've been in the tech industry for quite a while. Probably I first really got into AI when I was covering the RPA markets. In fact, the Invisible Robots, which you were nice enough to mention, book came out because I was going to these conferences. I was speaking at some of them, and there were thousands of people there, and they were all building RPA bots, and no one seemed to know about it. And these were very interestingly, cloud-based software apps that were actually doing a lot of work that people used to do, mostly in the mid and back office. So that's why I called them the invisible robots in the quiet of the night. And following that market, of course, a lot of RPA is considered sort of so-so technology. It doesn't transform much of anything. It doesn't create new industries like a lot of automation has done in the past. So the future for RPA obviously was to start to incorporate AI. So I was really following that trajectory. The first thing that the RPA market did was incorporate, document understanding, or what we call intelligent document extraction, which is a very practical form of AI. I was, following, those platforms and talking to clients about how they can use that. And then, of course, Gen AI exploded onto the scene. I'd actually started to write about something we called autonomous workplace assistants, which were slightly more intelligent RPA bots. And then when Gen AI hit, we renamed them AI agents. And now we're speaking about, agentic process automation, as the next thing. So it's been kind of a sort of gradual growing interest to me. And I've always been focused on what the effect on the workforce is for these technologies.
Very interesting. I just have a quick question. We are going to talk about fears surrounding AI technology later on. But when you were working with RPA, and at the beginning of that, was there fear around RPA? Like, oh my goodness, we have robots. That the robots are going to take over our jobs. Is that fear also going on?
Well, I mean, the early books about robots and the workforce probably were in 2014, 2015, 2013 even. There's always been a fear of, you go back to 1930s, and John Maynard Keynes was, saying that the way automation is going from the industrial revolution, the biggest problem that people would have in the year 2020 or 2030, 100 years later, would be what to do with themselves. So this is not a new conversation at all. But it really ramped up in that 2015, 2016, 2017 timeframe, and many of us were putting out models to predict how many jobs would be lost due to automation. One of the revelations I've had is that you really can't do that. That it's really hard to do. No one really knows the rate, and it's not going to be about job replacement as much as job shifts. Disruption of the way people think about work today, which really got me into thinking about writing another book that would follow up, in a sense, giving up on the forecasts, which tended to just scare everyone. And if you look at the economists who continually saw these forecasts of job displacement not being realized, that there's companies can't hire and keep people. So it really crystallized in my mind that let's talk about the shifts that workers will experience due to growing AI, and more importantly, what can they do about it?
Craig, quick question, quick follow-up to that. Do you subscribe to this philosophy or saying that the only people who are going to lose their jobs to generative AI are the ones who don't learn how to use generative AI?
No, I don't. I wouldn't embrace that. I think that this technology is going to affect four different categories of workers, which is sort of the framework for my book. It would affect them all differently. I do think that one of the skills that I recommend for the middle level, in particular, is to become AI operators. Is to learn how to use Gen AI to really start doing jobs that required more credentials than they have. So there's going to be an erosion for what I call the digital elites, where you don't need that advanced degree because you're able to operate AI and be able to have the decision support you need to do higher level jobs. And we're seeing that already in the legal profession with paralegals. We're seeing that with nurse practitioners. We're seeing that already. It's really kind of the optimistic path for the middle. I do think that every category, probably not the service workers or what I call the human touch workers, but certainly the digital elite and the middle will absolutely need to embrace Gen AI and use it in order to advance their careers.
Okay, so the next question is, so you recently authored a report about the automation fabric required with agentic process automation, which you kind of mentioned earlier. Can you describe what you believe agentic process automation is? Is it the same as RPA? And what is the orchestration fabric that you think is required?
Yeah, so certainly RPA is not agentic. Agentic comes from the word agency, right? And that just means being empowered, having the ability to get to a goal, to make decisions on your own behalf. So agentic really means a level of autonomy that the automation has, which with the power of Gen AI, that's able to make connections and understand context and understand where it's going, understand how not to get stuck. That we're now at a period where we can start to think about having, AI basically, develop work patterns, and move towards a goal, without having a human in the loop. And that's really what agentic means. Now, people throw around that word a lot. There's been a long, a multiple decade history of academics and researchers studying agentic systems, the healing and self-determining systems. We've now adapted that and got the semantics a bit confused with AI agents, which are essentially more focused, more task-oriented, that have this autonomous properties, but they really are automations that are focused on an end goal, and that's what an AI agent is. But really, all agentic really means is a level of autonomy that the automation has that it didn't have before.
Craig, another quick follow-up with agentic AI. If you think about hallucinations in regular generative AI, are those prone to enter the agentic world as well? And if so, how do enterprises guard against that? I know there's a stepped up, interest in governance, but these little agents running around, Might they not veer off on their own autonomous paths and do things we don't expect them to?
Yes, although I point out to people that I've had coworkers that have hallucinated quite a bit in my working with them. But um, you know, certainly that is the big issue. Trust is the big issue with all of this. But we're moving towards being able to control that level of hallucination that an agentic may have, an agentic and AI agent might have. And you do that from the information that you put into the prompt, which in a sense can narrow the scope of what the agent's trying to do. And then you have on the output processing side, you have guardrails that you put in where it's being checked for various things that are outside of a certain guardrail that's been established. We're all trying to figure that out. We're not there yet, but it looks very promising to be able to have constraints around the large language model that allows you to take care of its power, but also be sure it's not veering off, into bad areas. The other piece I recommend to a lot of clients is, focus these agentic processes on areas that are safer to begin with. So be able to assess a use case based on the downside of a mishap, and prioritize the use cases based on that. Develop confidence levels that you can calculate along the way, and that's really happening. A lot of those processes tend to be ones that are in the longer running processes, and they tend to be employee facing. So think of an employee coworker that's doing jobs maybe that you used to do, and less customer facing. Customer facing is where you have the most downside to brand, and you have the a customer could have a bad experience and take a different credit card out of their wallet. The employee is less likely to do something negative. So that's our advice on that.
I think we're going to shift gears a little bit and talk about your AI predictions for next year. You just wrote something for a paper about it for Forrester, and the new year is coming quickly. And what's going to happen next year
Well,
in
so
AI?
we're sort of narrowed to five predictions, and so there are a lot of predictions that I could make about automation in 2025. But probably one of them is that the a lot of the agents will be built by citizen developers. I think we predicted 30% would be. So one of the powers of Gen AI is the ability to really move the dial for sort of low code development, so that you can use natural language. The friction that normally existed between the design and development person trying to deal with these applications and these websites and these IDEs, essentially, a lot of that's gone away with Gen AI, which you can now have a more natural interaction with. And a lot of this Gen AI is doing that. It's reducing the friction between humans and technology. So a lot of that is going to put strain on governance at companies as your citizen developers are actually moving to AI agents. We also think that physical automation is really being benefiting as well, although more quietly. I mean, most of the interest and excitement is around cognitive automation. An agent that can do things that a sort of mid-level person was doing on a cognitive level. But when you start to combine Gen AI with a real robot, a real physical robot, whether it's a self-driving forklift, whether it's a security officer, an Android security officer, whether it's a drone, doing work, you start to take away one of the real barriers to physical automation, which is just not being very adaptable to conditions. It had to be very prescriptive, and now it can be more generalized in terms of its interaction. So physical automation was one of our predictions as well. We think that there's a new market that's emerging, and we're calling it agentic process orchestration, which is basically the fusing of a number of process tooling markets. And I know that you write about these areas quite a bit, but some are the RPA market, the business process management or DPA market, the iPaaS market, which deals with integration of software technologies. A new market that you have a lot of Gen AI startups coming in with AI agent platforms. Microsoft Copilot is an example of that, but there are literally, we're counting now 400 different platforms that can build agents. you know, and you have the low code market, which is the process tools that are there to build websites, but also to build process applications as well. So they're all starting to look very similar. They all have low code UIs that are driven by Gen AI. They all have RPA and DPA. They have orchestration. They have a native orchestration layer. And they all have AI agent building capabilities. So this new market we see developing, where probably the top providers from those 5 areas, will merge into a process orchestration market that will really focus on longer running processes, ones that require not just the human understanding that Gen AI gives you, but also the action components, some of which will be deterministic, like RPA and DPA APIs to workflows. But we see that as being kind of and really start to get going in 2025. So those are 3 of the 5.
I said, it doesn't seem like you think that the buzz around AI agents will die down in the next year.
No, I don't. I do think it's a little bit out of control now. But I think there's pretty good reason for that. I think there'll be some softness in the general copilot use cases where you're just infusing this intelligence to support a human in doing something, maybe summarizing their emails or creating a report, or doing some marketing creation. That's not going to give you the kind of business value that applying a real agent that's dealing with a longer running process will. So I think there'll be a bit of a shine off of the shiny object, as companies start to see, well, maybe I can't afford to pay $30 a seat for a copilot that's, giving George a little more time in the back of the building. We really we have to figure out how to really do the orchestration to blend Gen AI in with these more substantive workflows that really drive the business. And so I think we'll enter a period of productivity where we'll start to build agents again with a platform like a agentic process orchestration platform to do so. But it's a little crazy right now, but that's always the case in tech, right? But there's something really strong there. This is pretty miraculous technology when you think about what it can do, the connections it can make. I've been in tech a long time, and I think it's the biggest change, towards AGI that I've seen. And when you start to really start to turn piles of data into conversations with people, and there's so many use cases, that insurance policy that you never read because it's 80 pages and of course 79 on what it doesn't cover, and if, 4 pages on what it does cover. But imagine being able to have a conversation with that. How long have I had this policy? How much does it really cost me? What do my heirs get if I should actually pass away? That's the opportunity for this, for an employee to have a conversation with standard operating procedures to get advice on what to do, or for standard operating procedures to be taken out of that PDF repository and actually put into a prompt and generate tasks that are then followed by an agent to get something done. The potential is really there.
I wonder if you can make the distinction between AI agents and copilot, right? Because I think at the very beginning, before I think last week when Microsoft kind of made their own distinction, it kind of felt like it was the same thing. Can you make that distinction? And then also you kind of veer it into the use cases, and I wonder, as you were speaking, I'm like, isn't this getting a little bit too much into privacy, right? Can you speak also on that?
Yeah, so let me handle the first one first. So Microsoft got out quickly and called everything that it did basically Copilot. that had Gen AI associated with it. But we really think of three levels of agents. So I would call a copilot that's just doing this simple augmentation of a human an agent. But I would also call, a mid-level agent that has a combination of more of a hybrid combination of deterministic automation that's combined with non-deterministic Gen AI as sort of the sweet spot right now for a lot of use cases. And then full agentic is where you have an AI-driven workflow. That's really autonomous and gets to, an agentic capability. So, they're all agents. We actually have 5 categories of agents that we track. One of them is consumer advocacy agents. So this would be an agent that would get you a reservation at a restaurant. We have agents that are employee support. That's the ones that we're talking about here. There also are enterprise agents which work internally to a company, like what we call Turing bots that just help you write code, for example. That's a category of agents. And then we have fiduciary agents, which I think is a really interesting category, where you have an agent that's actually monitoring activity. That could be monitoring activity of sensors coming from the physical environment. It could be monitoring emails and text messages for an auditing process or compliance process. That's a really good area as well. So, there are 5 kind of use case categories for agents, and there are these 3 different spectrum of intelligence for agents. So I don't dismiss the value of the copilots or the simpler AI agents. I just think that what I'm hearing from clients is that they're a little disappointed with the business value, and that's where they're looking at. Like I was talking to a bank the other day, and they have alerts coming out of a anti-money laundering system, which all banks are required to have, and that's when you have a transaction of a certain value. It has to be an alert's created, and then someone has to look at it and say, well, this isn't the bad guys using the financial system, right? Well, you have an agent that has enough context and can make the connections, can do a first level of review. There are way too many false positives in that normal scenario. Too many things had to go to a human. The AI agent can basically very safely make the connections and dismiss a lot of those false positives. So there's a lot here.
To hear the full audio podcast, please go to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon, Audible, TuneIn, Podbean, and other popular podcast platforms.